Was Sauron truly evil, or merely a servant of order who lost his way? Few questions cut to the heart of Tolkien's legendarium more than this. To some, he was nothing but the Dark Lord, the Eye, the enemy of the free peoples. But Tolkien himself left us a far more unsettling truth, that Sauron began not as a monster, but as a maker. So was he truly the embodiment of evil, or something far more complicated? Watch closely, then tell me in the comments what you believe. Was Sauron pure evil or not? Long before the Rings of Power, before the fires of Mount Doom, Sauron had another name. He was Mairon, one of the Maia, angelic spirits shaped at the dawn of Arda. Among his kind he was counted noble, a servant of Olé the Smith, the great builder of the Valar. In those first ages, Mairon loved craft, design, and harmony above all else. Mairon's gift was precision. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns. Where others laboured clumsily, he refined. Tolkien himself wrote that Sauron's first virtue was his love of order and coordination, his hatred of confusion and wasteful friction. This was no dark passion. It was the heart of a mind seeking to perfect creation, to weave structure into the raw song of the world. Yet here lies the seed of tragedy. The very quality that made him admirable also made him vulnerable. A mind obsessed with order cannot long endure imperfection. Mairon's designs, born from his own isolated will, became ends in themselves. The plans ceased to serve others. Instead, others would exist to serve the plans. His virtue curved inward, turning into the root of his fall. When Melkor, the mightiest of the Valar, rebelled against creation, Mairon was drawn not to his chaos, but to his decisiveness. Melkor, who later became known as Morgoth, seemed strong enough to impose order, to sweep aside delay and inefficiency. Tolkien himself wrote that it was Melkor's apparent mastery that first attracted Mairon. In this reflection of strength, Mairon saw not destruction, but the possibility of a perfected world. Thus, the servant of Olé became the lieutenant of Melkor. Sauron, as he came to be known, carried his master's vision into practice. He was not a roaring destroyer, but a builder of fortresses, a commander of armies, a master of systems. Where Melkor spread terror, Sauron imposed control. In the wars of the First Age, he became the enforcer of tyranny dressed as order. Unlike Morgoth, who burned with raw hatred, Sauron's will was cold and methodical. He did not lash out for spite, but to bend the world into his design. And so he endured where his master faltered. Even after Melkor was cast into the void, Sauron remained, reshaping his purpose, cloaking his pride in guises of wisdom, waiting for his chance to claim dominion. In the Second Age, Sauron turned to subtlety. He no longer appeared as a monster of flame, but as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. Fair of form and fairer of words, he whispered, of knowledge, of craft, of the power to heal the world's wounds. He played upon the same desire that had once guided him: order, perfection, a world remade through art and design. The elves of Eregion listened. To Celebrimbor he gave secrets of forging, and together they wrought wonders, rings of power, bridges between mortal will and immortal strength. Yet behind the mask of Anatar lay the same flaw that had doomed Mairon. The rings were never meant as gifts freely given. They were tools of domination, snares of order, masquerading as blessings. The One Ring was the culmination of his design. Into it he poured his will, his hunger to bind and control. It was not crafted to spread chaos, but to impose unity, his unity, upon every other power in Middle-earth. To wear it was to hear his voice. To resist it was to feel the crushing weight of his relentless order. This is the heart of Sauron's evil. He did not believe himself cruel, at least not in the beginning. He believed himself just. He believed that if all bent to his command, waste and conflict would end. He believed the world would be perfected. But perfection without freedom is tyranny, and tyranny without limit is true evil. Sauron crossed that threshold long ago. Tolkien wrote that Sauron still had relics of positive purpose. He had not been born into malice. His schemes began with the well-being of others in mind. But his plans, drawn only from his own isolated mind, became ends in themselves. His will was no longer for the good of Arda. It was for the triumph of his design over every living thing. Sauron's likeness to Saruman makes this clearer still. Both began with virtue, Saruman with wisdom, Sauron with order. Both fell when their virtues turned to pride, when they ceased to love others and instead loved only their own schemes. Both saw in domination the shortest road to peace, and both were blind to the truth that peace without choice is only silence. Where Gandalf puzzled him, Saruman was transparent. Gandalf never sought to rule, so his actions flowed from mercy and unpredictability. But Sauron understood Saruman instantly because they shared the same cast of mind. Each saw the world as a puzzle to be solved, a design to be imposed. Each was willing to sacrifice others to preserve the clarity of their own vision. By the late Second Age, Sauron's mask had fallen away. No longer Anatar, he now ruled openly from Mordor. Armies marched, fortresses rose, the shadows spread. Yet even then, his goal was not senseless destruction. He sought mastery to bring all peoples into his order, bound under his single will. It was domination justified as coordination, empire justified as harmony. Tolkien was clear. Sauron went the way of all tyrants. He began well, at least in intention, considering the well-being of others, but pride and lust for domination drove him further than any mortal tyrant could go. For he was no mere man. He was an immortal spirit, and thus his will could spread endlessly, corrupting every age, resisting every defeat. Even in defeat, he endured. When Númenor fell, Sauron's body was destroyed, but his spirit survived, blackened and hateful. His fair form was lost forever, yet his will remained unbroken. He returned to Mordor, cloaked in malice, his obsession with order hardened into pure tyranny. If once he could justify his plans as good, now only domination mattered. And if you wish to know how Númenor itself was lost, I've told that story in another video waiting for you after this one. By the Third Age, Sauron was the eye in the dark tower. No longer a craftsman, no longer a lord of gifts. He was now the will to dominate made visible. His gaze searched the world, seeking weakness, punishing freedom. He had gone as far from Mehron as possible. All that remained was the certainty that only he could master creation. Was he still the servant of order at this point? Perhaps only in the most terrible sense, for his order meant the silence of death, the stasis of fear. It meant orcs and men ground into ranks of obedience, lands stripped bare for war, and a world bent into the shape of his desire. His order had become indistinguishable from destruction itself. And yet, behind this terror lay the same flaw Tolkien described from the beginning. Sauron could not truly love others, only use them. His schemes were born from his own isolated mind, and so when they failed, he could not understand why. It was why Gandalf eluded him, why Frodo and Sam seemed impossible. Freedom was beyond his comprehension. At Mount Doom, his downfall was sealed. The ring, his final and greatest plan, was undone not by strength, but by weakness, by the pity he could never feel. In the destruction of the ring, the order he had forged collapsed into dust, armies scattered, towers fell, the eye was extinguished. The Dark Lord's evil ended as it had begun, with blindness to mercy. So, was Sauron truly evil? Tolkien's answer is clear. He began well. He sought order, craft, and the good of others. But pride and domination twisted his virtue into tyranny. He was as near wholly evil as a will could be, not because he began in malice, but because his love of order became absolute until nothing else remained. This is what makes Sauron terrifying. He is not the monster from outside, but the craftsman from within. His fall is not the fall of a beast, but of a mind that loved too much the clarity of its own vision. In that way, he is closer to us than we care to admit. For order without mercy is a temptation all can know. In every age, Tolkien reminds us, there are those who begin with good intentions, who claim only to bring peace, unity, and prosperity. But when their vision hardens into domination, when they demand obedience rather than invite trust, they become tyrants. Sauron is their shadow carried to its ultimate form, an immortal will that no longer sees others as free beings. Sauron was not born evil. He became evil. His story is a warning that even the brightest virtues can be corrupted when pride makes them absolute. His fall began with order, but it ended with tyranny, and in that tyranny he became what Tolkien himself named him, an approach to the holy evil will. But do you agree? Was Sauron truly evil in the end, or was he merely a servant of order who lost his way? Let me know your answer in the comments.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more great stories. Cheers.